Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here, for Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with some of the crew.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
Today we're going to be talking about enticing new players into the exciting hobby of RPG games.
Woo-hoo.
And so I was inspired by this topic by we had a special guest last week. We shot some videos with Scott Garibay, and he's got these really interesting ideas about gaming and how it should be done. And a lot of his stuff is really like, you know, how am I going to capture new players and keep them in this game? Mm-hmm. They have all this competition out there with video games and movies and comic books. How do I get them to play role-playing games?
How are they going to spend their Saturday night?
Right. And so, like, he's like, well, you got to have high magic, right? And monsters should be like piñatas and they just drop stuff. And, like, you know, you can't have them scrabbling in the dirt for a +1 longsword. You need to get them a Holy Avenger, and you need to do it stat.
Well, having played for, decades and having very few characters that have ever really achieved the epic levels, it's definitely a different frame of thought, different frame of reference to have that. Monster piñatas. I've played hours and hours of video games, and you can go out and attack dogs and slimes and have them explode into coins and magical gear. And I've made jokes many times over, like, that doesn't make sense. Why does that happen?
Yeah.
Why does a slime have a 10 on him?
And the other thing too, Scott likes to bring up is it's 2015. I think this applies more to newer gamers and younger gamers than us, because we've been around a long time,
right.
and we didn't have as many options, and they weren't nearly as cool as they are now.
Right.
So, what do you guys think the importance of enticing new players to the hobby? Obviously, I know you guys think that's important, but like, what's the carrot we have to use? How do we get these guys into the game and keep them? What do you think they need?
Well,
do you agree with Scott Garibay?
My opinion is I definitely feel that some of what Scott says, is going to add appeal to the game. But I think first and foremost is you're either going to be, you're appealed by fantasy. You're going to find an interest in it and get out of your regular skin, if you will, and get into a character, or you're not. Regardless of the treasure and the loot. If you're interested in playing a story, playing a character, you're gonna like D&D. If that doesn't appeal to you, the treasure and the rewards are not gonna pull you in.
Except for there's whole sects that play this game solely for the getting of stuff and
the monster piñatas.
In the monster, yeah.
I would say there has to be some kind of progression. If you go like 3 sessions and you didn't get anything new, and I'm not just talking magic items, just like you just like, oh, here's some gold. It's not really enticing, but developing. If you don't develop a story plot with the player, give them something, have them do something cool, or if it was just like a mediocre session, and they have 3 mediocre sessions and they're new to the game, they're gonna be like, meh, I could do other things. But if you're like, that kind of like, hey, look at what we've got over here, I think you have to do one of those 3 things. You've either got to engage with them beyond just like asking them what they do. You've got to give them something that's interesting to them, whether it's just a magic item or it's some kind of
story
device.
Reward.
Some kind of story reward, or you have to, if they're a player who's really into the background, you got to develop something going along with you got to move around along one of those paths, the treasure path, the story reward path, or something cool happened in the game with me path. If you're not doing that, I don't see the person's not progressing in anything, and they can see that, oh, there's zeros in those categories. They don't necessarily have that in their mindset or have a chart somewhere, but it's there because I've heard it from players who've played a long time, and I've heard it from new players. Like, well, I didn't really do anything this session because nothing's happened to them for them to interact with. They didn't get anything from it. So
like, screw you guys, I'm going home and I'm playing WoW.
You got to move one of those forward, or you're just not going to keep that player if they're not already basically obsessed with the game.
Right.
I mean, we've got you forever, Ted.
So
Ted, you're a rock this session.
Nice.
You're like, yes. I've never played a rock all session.
Another thing.
Are you talking about the flying bird? Or are you talking about
a rock, like the thing kids kick around? But you hit a can.
Oh.
Now you have armor.
Where? Where are kids kicking rocks around? They don't even go outside anymore.
I've kicked a few rocks back in the day. No, so like one of those three elements, if you're not moving those forward, the person's not engaged. So.
I would look at it like, well, why do people read novels? Like, what reward do they seek there? That's kind of like the same kind of enticement, you know? And again, it's basically what you said, is it's like, okay, you're going to give them something in the game to invoke their imagination and make them feel part of something greater. That's ultimately how you entice players and get them to stay.
You want to feel that you want them to feel that they're involved and this greater tale that's being woven, you know, this potentially, you know, world-changing event, you know, they're a part of.
And you know, so while you can do this by having a lot of magic going on and like giving them high levels and
well, I think that's the easy way. That's the easy way to do it.
You're
just spamming that treasure level button. You know, ability advancement treasure button. You know,
now if
stuff's happening to them.
If that's your style, you know, if you're into, you know, the high level, the high magic, and that's what you and your players like, there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't feel that that's the only way or the ultimate requirement.
You notice Teddy's trying to like gloss it over and put the Band-Aid on it and be like, "It's okay, Scott. Your way's perfectly fine."
No, I mean the thing with Scott is he hits those buttons every single session, but his stories are also fantastic. They're so good. Great. I don't mind that they're only like. Well, I do mind that they're only 6 sessions long. So.
Scott Garvey.
We only wish they were longer. Yeah. Well, so aside from having the 6-session campaigns, which I've never really experienced before, you know, he's got interesting story and plot going on. For those 6 sessions, there's not a session where I'm like, wow, Jack happened.
Nothing happened.
Yeah. Except I got this plus whatever sword, and I don't care about it because the story didn't advance.
But speaking to that angle, the whole you know limited session arc, you know, he feels that like you need to do a shortened story arc so that the players can say, okay, well, I've enjoyed this, and now I can make a new character and move on to a different quote-unquote character build, because he feels that's another way to keep players entertained. You do this grand arc, you start at the Midland level, in his opinion, at 10, you get to epic levels, you finish this great story, you've been a part of something fantastic, and now we can retire that character and move on.
It's like finishing a jam-packed book.
Direct Scott Garrity quote. Getting 4 to 5 players together for an ongoing game is impossible. I anticipate the group breaking up. So
someone's going to move. Someone's going to have a kid. Yeah. Someone's going to get a significant other that doesn't want them role playing anymore. They're going to get a job that's going to change things. There's all these different possibilities, and that does happen. You know, but there are groups out there that continue to meet, you know, week after week.
I think we should do a new series on Scott Garrity.
Well, you know, his play style is different than our traditional group. And I have to say, out of all those things you said, Ted, I have left the gaming group for several of them at different times or another. Or, you know, playing in college. Even then, it was just like, well, I've got this new thing going on. I just don't have time for this game. And some things.
That's code for Nate discovered Putang.
there's way more things to do out there, and I definitely agree with Scott on the idea of you've got, you know, all these other obligations. Getting 4 to 5 people together is difficult. In fact, we don't even try and get 4 to 5 people because we have large groups. But if we only had 4 to 5 people, I would still run with 3. Because I would it's better than stopping that's a whole other thing. It's how do you keep your game going.
So the other side, like, we talked a lot about what Scott does and his opinions, but we've also experienced a ton of low-level games. And, you know, I don't know if our games has fizzled because of the exact things that Scott brought up, but I feel like we still have those rewarding things that have happened that we still talk about years later, even though our games never got to high levels. Maybe we didn't get epic treasure and whatnot.
We've talked about your one, as you call it, a fail, because we had a high level game where there was literally ridiculous amounts of loot and 3 pages worth of typed miscellaneous treasure that we're somehow hauling. Yes, we've seen that. Yes, we've been there. But as we've said in other videos, we've got a multitude of low level games that we've played, and we don't feel that there's any less interesting stories and interesting tales. We go back to them time and time again, where, we've got the humorous total party kills that, yeah, it was low level, yes, we made a mistake, or, yes, something bad happened, we weren't managing this or that, but we've got scenes and memories of, ridiculous things happening, and it doesn't matter whether they're low level or whether they're high level, as long as the story is compelling and interesting. It doesn't matter whether it's, high magic or low magic. It's the story that keeps people coming back. It's the story and the players' actions and antics at times that make it all interesting and worthwhile to come back to.
We're also speaking from a group that's been together for a really long time. There's a commitment level to the group that not getting 4 or 5 guys together or gals that you've never hung out with too much before, or just like a little bit, and you're like, hey, let's go try D&D. I see that as being the difficulty in getting those people to say, like, yeah, we can go for a year and a half straight every Saturday or every other Saturday, or once a month. That's like a lot less realistic unless there's a high compelling reason, which can be consistent interaction throughout the whole year and a half that people are together. So there's a commitment level from players to be in a group, and then there's a commitment level of a bunch of people to have a group to play, or to play in a group. So that's like a different commitment level to being a group that plays, and commitment level to playing in a group.
I don't think either of those are as irrelevant as, what you need to do is get your players excited about the game. Get them like, I can go to the movies Saturday, or I can go play this game because I want to know what happens next. And like, okay, we talked about Scott's who throwing levels and treasure at them is one of the ways he sees that he entices people, but he doesn't understand he's also telling fantastic stories, I don't think, which is very enticing in itself.
Maybe he's glossing over that, just
But here's what I've seen recently, because what you're talking about is the situations that we have to deal with right now anyway, but because we have a large group of adults who are fully engaged in their lives. They have things going on, there's kids, there's jobs, there's all this stuff, right? So how do we get them excited about the game? Like, for instance, in my recent game, like, I've been giving people positions of prestige, unique mounts. In Ted's game, basically almost a familiar for a character that normally wouldn't have a familiar, which makes them very excited, and they talked about it for the next 2 days. I know I have to live with that person. There's all these things, something that has a reward that's going to kind of keep coming back and giving in Ted's game is, this grove now that has this guardian spirit that, is going to be a thing in the game. In previous games years ago, I've done it where the one character actually created a Trent, so to speak, and set that up in the center of a city in like a park area, so that almost became like a magical grove. So like that was always something to lure that character back to that, and it's always going to be like a crowning achievement. So over the years, there's always been things like that, or like. There was a half-elven fighter wizard, and their spell book was basically jam-packed with illusion magic from the character's elven mother that had passed away, and so she was still acting kind of like a virtual assistant or virtual mentor in his teaching. So there are tons of ways that don't really impact the game mechanics that you can reward the players and get them excited about what they're doing.
And when you do something that isn't a part of the game, that doesn't affect essentially combat prowess in any way, shape, or form, it's not something that the DMG or the player's handbook says, oh, do this. It is far better because it's not something that they ever thought was going to be possible, and I think it's far more compelling. It's going to keep players far more interested because it's unique, because it's more interesting, and it's not just what's the +1 sword? All right, so your D20 roll is 1 better, your damage your damage amount is 1 better. Is that more compelling than any of the reasons you just gave? I say no.
I would agree with you on that. And with the current campaign that Ted's running, we're all contributing to the creation of what's going to happen next. So like next year, if we played a different campaign, we played it in Gryffindor, we have all the things that our other characters have done.
Right.
So it's kind of like a continuation and like actually impacting the realm that we're creating.
Another good example of that was one of Ted's characters in a one-shot finding a talking mushroom. He decided to dig it up, take it with him, and now that thing lives in Gryffindor somewhere, and the other players have encountered it from a different game and interacted with it again. So, I'm going to end it right here. We're going to sum it up with the best way to entice new players into the hobby and keep them is get them excited about the game you're running.
However that happens, whatever things that you can do.
Interesting backstory,
Get them involved, get them excited, like you said.
That's it, man. Let us know how you're getting new players involved and enticing them to stay with the hobby, not just try it out, in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out at nerdarchy.com.
Just to join the conversation over on Reddit.
So until next time, stay nerdy.